You're listening to The Back 40, the podcast for Ontario farmers, covering topics and issues that matter most to Ontario agriculture. Brought to you by Trillium Mutual Insurance, bringing the ag community together one podcast at a time. I'm the host of The Back 40, Mike Bryan, agribusiness specialist at Trillium Mutual Insurance. Many people are aware the weather out west has not been cooperating particularly for farmers, mostly from west of Ontario out to the mountains. There's been not a lot of rain in many areas. They're suffering from a pretty severe drought. And in some cases, we're talking about hay crops that have been completely lost, and farmers that have animals out there that don't have hay to feed their beef cows and don't have feed to feed their livestock. We've seen this before. If we go back to 2002, we had a similar drought out there, although maybe not quite as widespread as this one. And Ontario farmers responded and shipped hay. It became known as Hay West, and it was a project that Ontario farmers responded and sent a lot of hay to the farmers out in Western Canada. Stratford area farmer Martin Ritsma was involved in 2002, and he's back again for a second round. Martin is a farmer on the outskirts of Stratford. He's also the deputy mayor of Stratford. Many people will know him for years with the Avon-Maitland District School Board. He was a teacher, principal and vice principal, and particularly associated with Stratford Northwestern. Martin, welcome to the Back 40.
Thank you very much, Mike, and thank you for your interest in this very, very important topic this morning. Thank you for taking the time to get some information and, allow us to share that information with so many people through your podcast.
So I think maybe the place to start here, give us a sense of how bad it is out in Western Canada as far as the drought goes.
I guess the sense of urgency with me, and I'll speak to the climatic piece in a moment, but the emails and calls that I'm getting from farmers, whether it's Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, saying we need help. And, farmers are pretty hardy people. Men and women that are on the farm reaching out and saying we need help is kind of not what they usually do. The severity of this is reflected in those outreaches by individuals, by email and phone saying, thank you for what you're doing, and we need hay. So that's from the emotional side. That's from the people side. And thankfully, they are reaching out. But on the climactic side, I know you alluded to 2002. It was a significant drought, but this is much more pervasive. It starts in northern Ontario, the Kenora area. It rolls across Manitoba and then into southern Saskatchewan and southern Alberta. So it is widespread.
And if we don't get hay out, we're going to lose some of the cow herds, and there's going to be some people that are going to be out of business. But you're right. It's difficult for farmers to reach out and say, I need help. But there's no feed on the prairies. For cattle, their feed is pretty well gone in many areas.
It's interesting. You mentioned about the cow herd, and I'm going to read an email that I received yesterday. It says, I'm farming in Alberta, and it's been a rough year. We run a small 35 cow pair operation and are slowly building our herd. But unfortunately, we have to sell our replacement heifers this year due to hay shortage. And the replacement heifer piece is so important because if we lose those cow herds, then we lose part of our chain with regards to food security, because we know those herds produce some of the best stockers in North America that feed our Eastern market feedlots. And one thing about COVID, it's really shone the light on food security. And, that small operation saying to me, we're going to lose some of our herd, that's significant. I know I sent hay and somebody sent a letter back the last time saying we have a 250 cow herd, a little bigger, right? And I'm sure there are bigger ones. It is extensive, and it's different than, say, for the hog industry. If we dial back the production with regards to sows and gilts, if we dial that back and they go to slaughter a little early, but if we do that with the beef cows, then we're losing a cycle that is hard to get back in play quickly.
Yeah, this is not, well, we're going to be in trouble this year, so we'll just start again next year. When these cows, this replacement stock is gone, we're talking years to get back to where we are right now.
And to that end, I know people are already talking that we may have to rely more on U.S. feeder cattle, stocker cattle, as we go into this year, there's going to be plenty because they're going and they're going early. But as we go into next year and the year after, if we diminish those cow herds, we're going to diminish the stocker availability. And so once again, we're going to be reaching south of the border and saying, okay, we need to fill that. I just as an anecdote, I grew up on a dairy farm till I was kind of teenage years, and then I was taken in by a family farm near Topping, Ontario, and it was a big feedlot. All of our cattle came out of Western Canada. We fed between 400 and 500 beef, and they all came from Western cattle. Some of the best feeder cattle you're going to have, in North America. This situation, as in 202, I could absolutely touch those animals that came from those ranches. And so once again, the importance of not allowing those herds to be so badly decimated that it's going to impact us, as you mentioned, for years.
So you talk about 2002, and you were involved at that point in moving hay west. Give us a sense of what that was like and how that worked for us.
I'll start by saying that the message, the reason for doing it is the same in both ends. How we're doing it is a little different, but I always think about it was hay and hope. Sending hay, but also sending hope that we're going to get you through this winter. So that hasn't changed. We are the same. We're telling people we have hay, we have an abundance of hay, and we want to send that hay, but we also want to send you the hope that we're going to get you through. In 2002, I can clearly remember I had a brother that was very ill. And I said to my wife, I said, if things don't go well and my brother Ralph doesn't make it, I'm going to jump both feet into this. And that's what I did. And I believe it was August the 9th. I jumped in. I contacted Ottawa, ironically through my sister's son-in-law. He was involved with the Federal Rail Service, and I was able to obtain rail cars. My first meeting was with a group of guys from Eastern Ontario, McWilliams family, and they had started the Hay West in Eastern Ontario. And I'm thinking, I can do this in Southwestern Ontario. And they wanted us to haul the hay to Guelph, Ontario. And I looked at it and I thought, no, I need to find a location. So I found a small rail spur at Shakespeare, Ontario. I contacted my sister's son-in-law and I said, tell me if I can utilize that rail spur with permission, obviously, from the owner. And he got back to me within 24 hours and it was a go. So the hay was accumulated at that site in Shakespeare, Ontario. And I can clearly remember the first cars coming in. It felt like eternity, but 5 cars rolled in and we had the hay there. We telehandled the hay into the car. We had a skid steer in the car, pushed in the front, pushed in the back of the car, and then filled out the middle of the load with the telehandler. And, with that, we sent 30 rail cars out west. And then obviously to put it in educational terms, the culminating activity is I wanted to take a load of hay to a farmer that wasn't successful. They did a lottery at that time. And I worked through a gentleman at a sales barn in Bigger, Saskatchewan. And I'll remember this forever, what I read on the sign where it said, New York's big, but we're bigger. And I remember driving in, seeing that sign. And I said to the sales barn rep, I need to know somebody that needs hay and hasn't received it. And he gave me a name of a young farmer that was farming just close to Bigger, Saskatchewan, not too far removed from Saskatoon. I must tell you that on the way up from Regina to Saskatoon, we get outside of Saskatoon and I played the song Running Back to Saskatoon. You might know that too. We rolled into that farm about 2:30 in the morning and Marvin Good, a really good friend of mine that he farmed right across the road from me on 119. He said, do we have the right spot? And I said, Marvin, yes, we do. And the farmer came out. It was a blessed experience. He saw that load of hay and that's where the hope came in, hay and hope, right? And it was late at that point. We went to bed, but there were 2 significant things that stood out with me. The small drifts on the road. And I thought, gee, that looks like snow drifts. And it was dust, how dry it was dust drifts. And then the dust on the windowsills that would blow in through the house, this tiniest cracks. I shared that story in the local paper, and a gentleman that lives in Bornholm, Ontario called me and he said, your story meant so much to me because our family homesteaded in Saskatchewan in 1910. And he said, we wasn't born yet. We went from Mount Forest to Saskatchewan. And he said, I can remember those dust storms. And afterwards, I was old enough, he said, that I would be getting a bucket of water and some soap and we'd clean the house. He said, so what you said resonated so much with me. And they moved back to southwestern Ontario again. So, they get back to that gentleman that received that hay. That was a magical moment for sure.
I'm sure that you're looking forward to many opportunities to share with people that same sort of experience this time around. And you said that this time it's going to be a little bit different. How are you planning on getting the hay out to Western Canada?
A great question. One of my first calls when I started this was a company that produces trailers down in Delhi, Ontario, and they build a variety of different trailers, etc. And they had trailers that they were building that were going west empty to Delta, BC, to a dealership that sells them. Those trailers are being used in the forestry business for the wood chips. And so he had the idea of, let's put hay in them, take them west, drop the hay off in the area off the Trans-Canada in, Saskatchewan, Alberta. So he got permission from the trucking company that was buying them, the trailer company, I should say. So that was my first conversation. And to that end, we loaded a load my very first load went out last Friday. We loaded it at Punky Doodle's Corner at Green Acre Farms. It's Tim and Gary Wagler. They own that with their sons. And we loaded some beautiful hay that I said, if you're making hay, make me a 7.5 by 3 by 3 bale. And we loaded them on a truck, and it even had the walking floor that you set them on the back of the truck and it walked that hay right up. So we loaded, it was about 24 ton, 51 bales, big bales, beautiful bales at 7.5, they're big bales. And so those went out last Friday. So I mentioned that because the last time we had the farmers bring it to my depot at Shakespeare, Ontario, I loaded it on rail cars. So that was my first call. But through the work, my second call was to the Federal Minister of Agriculture, Marie-Claude Bedeau. I called her office. Well, why can't I call her office, right? One of her assistants called back. And so between them and the Canadian Federation of Agriculture, I'm working with them with regards to the transportation piece. So not unlike what we did last Friday, we're going to match the donation of hay with a trucking company, whether it's a trailer, whether it's a van, whether it's a rail container. We're going to match that, and that truck will come right to the farm site and we'll load it there. And that'll be, I think, a little handier for farmers than previous, but I'm getting calls from across Ontario. I had a call from a farmer in Dunnville, Ontario, saying, I've got hay, what's my next step? To that end, there's a couple questions I ask them, and then the directions follow. So I ask them first and foremost, okay, is this hay you would feed your own animals? Because we're trying to set a bar here for, we want to send the right stuff, right? Is this hay you would feed your own animals, or is it hay that you would sell that somebody else would feed? And to that end, then you've got your standard cover. And I know last time I only had one poor scenario where somebody brought some hay in and it never went on the car because it was something that they used it as an opportunity to clean out a barn that had the hay had sat for a bit. So that's key, that we're sending a good product to nourish these animals. And then the other things that I asked them to do, that because that becomes the information for me through CFA to connect that hay donation to transportation. I need their full address with their 911 number. I need to know the type of hay, large squares, rounds. I need to know the exact dimensions, and then the number of bales. Like the farmer that I reloaded up last Friday, he has 150 beautiful big squares between first cut and second. Actually, the first load was third crop, but he has 150. We were able to match a truck and take 50 of those. So that's where the difference is. Instead of them bringing it to a site, we are going to organize, and that's a big piece of what I'm doing. I'm receiving the calls and then trying to connect, or will be connecting, those farmers that want to make that generous donation to transportation to move that hay right from their farm.
Do you like what you're hearing from the Back 40? We'd like to hear from you. Send us an email with your comments and thoughts to theback40@trilliummutual.com or follow us on social media @Trillium Mutual. So you're looking for a couple of things here. You're looking for hay, but you're also looking for someone to take it out west.
Yes, that's the piece where I know there's been commitment by the federal government for drought dollars, and so those dollars that the farmers are receiving, or I shouldn't say are receiving, that will receive, will give them an opportunity, one, to be in the queue for hay. That'll be our base, because we want to make sure we're sending it to the right people, the most needy. And then they will also have some dollars to help cover some of the transportation costs as well, because that's the big challenge. There will be some trucks that'll go out, I'm sure, that'll do it out of their kindness of their heart. But for the majority, it will be their opportunity to make some money on driving it out there. And so to that end, between the federal dollars going to the farmer, then with the government, they're going to help support the trucking fees.
So that'll get a little bit from everybody there. That'll help everybody out. So the farmer isn't going to be stuck paying the whole shot on this. There's some money to help.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, at first there was some concern that we would have to not only bring in the hay donations, but also bring in the monetary donations to pay the diesel, the trucking end of it. And so I'm happy that that piece has kind of been taken off the table. We still will use some funds locally to move hay about. So for example, somebody has 15 bales, I won't send a truck to pick up 15 bales. I'll send a smaller trailer to pick up, and then we'll amass those. I talked to a gentleman yesterday. He has 20 large bales, and I'm going to match them with a guy at Mitchell, Ontario that has 15, and then build a load. We have some individuals. Talked to a gentleman from Milverton, Ontario last night, and he wants to send in some monies to help to that end, so that if there are costs with regards to moving hay about locally, and some to go west, that we have some funds. And so we are set to go in that world as well.
How's the response been so far?
I hate to say it's been surprising, but it hasn't been surprising. It has been absolutely outstanding from farmers. And I've got my Hay West binder going here. And you learn things from the last time. I wasn't as diligent with writing everything down, but the response has been phenomenal. And I'll say, and it hasn't been just Stratford and area. It's been across Ontario. It's been Owen Sound. It's been Dunnville, Ontario. So people are phoning saying, I got hay, connect me with somebody that needs it out west. And that's what we're doing. So the response has been good on the ground with regards to hay. I had a guy this morning call me. He says, I've got 28 acres. Should I cut it and bale it? I said, you go ahead and do it. If you cut it and bale it, I will guarantee you it will make its way west to a farmer, north or northwest, to a farmer that needs it. So that has been outstanding. The monetary piece continued. I had a call from a person from London, Ontario, a retired teacher, and she lives in an apartment in London, Ontario. And she said, we want to give some money to help support this. And to that end, those calls continue to come as well. And if I could just go into that area as well, as I've set up an account in Stratford, Ontario with Libro Credit Union, and they are great at supporting not-for-profit activities. And so I've set up a bank account there that people can electronically and or with a hard copy check, we can get money deposited in there. And once again, then I'm one arm's length away from it, then it's all accounted for as well.
So are you on your own on this, or do you have people that are helping you out with the logistics of getting everything all matched up and getting the same moved?
Yeah, you're never alone. If you reach out, as you say, the response is great. So the response from the Federal Minister of Agriculture's office has been outstanding. The response from CFA, the Canadian Federation of Agriculture, has been outstanding. And the calls coming in saying, hey, if you need some help moving hay from point A to point B, if you need some help with the logistics, let me know. And so I've been blessed because I know at the CFA level, there's a gentleman that's going to deal with the logistics of working with me with the transportation piece. And there's going to be a gentleman where his boots are going to be on the ground through individuals in the West to assure that those people that need the hay the most will get it. So to that end, yeah, the support is there. Absolutely, it's there, and I'm very pleased. But it's not a surprise, right? Farmers are an impressive group of people. It's an impressive sector, and farmers are known for helping when help is needed. This is, no different than any other time. It's a little bit more, as I said earlier, a little bit more pervasive, but difficult times will call for bigger measures and bigger action. And I see that right from the federal commitment of dollars from the Federal Ministry of Agriculture to the CFA being involved, OFA donating $50,000 towards transportation. So it is an absolute blessing. And if I may, I mention hay and hope because the mental health piece of it, I'm awake at nights thinking about it. And yet I am not the farmer that's doing right now. And the challenges at the best of time in agriculture, it's an unsure business. You put a crop in the ground or you put 150 head of cattle in to feed, and you don't know what the end result's going to be. You don't know what the price at the end of the day will be or what the growing conditions will be. The mental health piece has to be huge on those individuals. And so to that end, that's why this is so important that we're saying, hey, we're there to help and we're going to help. Because some people are currently feeding cereal crops that's not going to make it. I was talking to somebody yesterday and their corn isn't going to make it. So guess what? It's not going to be grain corn, but they're going to make it up and they're going to begin to feed that now. And the same with the cereal grains. We're looking at crop yields that are 20 to 30% of an average yield. And not only is the yield poor, but the quality of it is poor as well. It's the idea of saying, you know what, if you need to feed that product now, we're going to have hay because this isn't something that ends in October. This is going to stretch right up to Christmas and the New Year because they'll need that food product, that hay product to get their livestock through.
Do you have a sense of how many farmers you're going to be able to help, or is that a moving target at this point?
Yeah, I wouldn't even want to begin to guess. It reminds me of, are you going to make a difference? And it reminds me, and everybody knows this story, where a gentleman's walking along the beach and he sees this other guy bent over and there had been a storm and the guy was bending over and he says, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, I'm throwing these starfish back into the water." He goes, "So is that going to make a big difference? So look at the thousands of starfish here stranded on the beach." And he picks one up and he throws it back into the water and he says, "Well, it made a difference on that one." And, and that's the mentality. I don't think we want to quantify it right now. I think we want to qualify it by saying we're here to help and we're going to do our best to help as many as possible. Will we get everybody to the degree that they need? Probably not, but we're going to make a difference, individual dairy farmer or rancher at a time. And that's the mentality I have. I think if you look at it with too broad of a lens, you're going to be overwhelmed. But I think if you can narrow that lens a wee bit and say, yep, I'm going to help Sally Smith in Chaplin, Saskatchewan, or Jim Jones in Eckerd, Alberta, well, then you know what? We've done it. So I don't think we want our lens so big as starting to count at this time. We want our lens to be, we are going to make a difference.
So Martin, I've known you for a lot of years. You're always busy. You always have something on the go. Why is this so personal for you?
I'm going to go, I'm in tears here. I'm going to go back to my first one, and that's, we have ALS in our family. My mom and 5 siblings have died of ALS, and my brother, Ralph, at that time in 2002, was very sick with ALS and died in early August. And you know what? I made a commitment to him and my other siblings. They died at a very young age that, you know what, if you can't do it, and I know you would be the first in line to do it, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do it I'm going to carry your share as well. So, that's part of it from an emotional side. The other side of it, I've been in agriculture all my life, born and raised on a dairy farm, saw the good times and the blessings, but also lived through some pretty tough times. To that end, being taken in by a large beef producer in this area that, I saw exactly where those beef animals came from and the quality of the animals, and learned to respect what the farmers, a big part across our country, were bringing to the table here in Eastern Ontario, Southwestern Ontario, that, that connection as well. So when you have the capacity to serve and to make a difference, whether it's Hay West or anything else in your local and or global community, I think it's imperative that you take that opportunity and do it. My wife would say to me, I knew you were going to do this. And, amen. I'm doing it. And yeah, I look at it from that perspective. I can make a difference. And if I can make a difference, if I can instill in somebody else the belief, the trust that if they donate dollars or hay, it is going to be used wisely, spent wisely, donated wisely. If I can build that trust in our community, which I think I have from over my 30 plus years in agriculture, I know I have built that trust. And so that people can pick up the phone and say, Martin, tell me what's going on and tell me how this is going to work. It's having that trust, in my voice saying, yeah, this is how we're going to do it. And, I make the promise that we'll do our very, very best to see what you donate goes to those men and women that are in need out west.
So for others that want to make a difference, how do they get in touch with you and how do they get involved?
You can make a difference by picking up the phone and giving me a call. I will share my cell number, 519-276-9659, 519-276-9659. That's Stratford, Ontario. And you can text to that. That's a big difference from 202 to here. The use of technology has been phenomenal. And then my email address is all lowercase, martinritsma@gmail.com. So it's martinritsma@gmail.com. So martinritsma@gmail.com. And whatever the question is, whatever the donation is, I will respond in an honest, sincere fashion. I'll promise that I'll do the very best with your donations that's possible and to make a difference, to deliver hay and hope to those individuals in need.
Martin, I want to thank you for taking time to be with us on the Back 40. I also want to take time to thank you for taking the initiative to tackle this very, very important project that is going to make a difference to so many farmers in the West that are suffering from the drought.
Thank you very much, Mike. I appreciate it.
Join us next time when we'll be talking to Emma Butler from J&E Meats, and we'll be discussing the advantages of direct marketing from farm to consumer. That's next time on the Back 40. You've been listening to The Back 40, brought to you by Trillium Mutual Insurance. Be sure to subscribe to The Back 40 wherever you find your favorite podcasts so that you don't miss an episode. The Back 40, bringing the ag community together one podcast at a time. I'm Mike Brine. Until next time, take care and stay safe.